What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely honored to introduce you all to 20-year cybersecurity professional and cybercrime whistleblower specializing in cybersecurity engineering, artist and creative, and a woman on a mission to help create awareness on the topic of protecting children from online predators, Jane. For over 2 decades, Jane has stood as a titan in the realm of cybersecurity, her expertise in cybersecurity engineering forging a formidable legacy across industries like healthcare, finance, technology, and retail. With a career defined by innovation and vigilance, Jane has been a linchpin in safeguarding digital ecosystems against the relentless tide of cybercrime. Collaborating with elite cybersecurity investigation teams and partnering with cybercrime specialists, Jane has honed a razor-sharp understanding of the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Her mission transcends mere defense. She is a wealth of knowledge, empowerment, and advocacy, driven by an unwavering commitment to protect the most vulnerable among us, our children. In an era where technology evolves at breakpoint speed, Jane has witnessed the double-edged sword of progress. The same advances that connect and empower us also open gateways for predators, with social media platforms and artificial intelligence becoming hunting grounds for those who exploit innocence. Armed with her vast experience, Jane has become passionate about a cause that burns at the core of her being, shielding children and our most vulnerable from online predators. She sounds the alarm on the insidious dangers woven into the digital fabric, such as fake profiles, grooming tactics, and even AI-driven manipulation that can ensnare the unsuspecting. Her work shines a light on the stark reality that child exploitation thrives in the unchecked corners of the internet, from encrypted chat rooms to algorithmically curated content that can subtly normalize harm. Jane's advocacy in whistleblowing is both a call to action and a masterclass in prevention. She educates parents, educators, and communities on the critical need for digital literacy, urging them to recognize red flags on the many platforms that fail to prioritize child safety. She champions robust cybersecurity measures to fortify the online world against exploitation. Jane's passion urges those who know of these crimes to understand the importance of pushing for stricter regulations, awareness, and proactive monitoring to dismantle networks that are targeting and harming children. Her mission is clear. Protecting children online demands a collective, unrelenting effort to outsmart those who prey on trust. Beyond her technical prowess, Jane's journey is a testament to resilience and purpose. She has seen the darkest corners of the digital landscape, cases of trafficking, grooming, and extortion that fuel her resolve. Yet, she transforms this knowledge into hope, bringing to the forefront the importance of things like parental controls, safe browsing habits, and open communication to create digital safe havens. Jane's voice resonates with a rallying cry, reminding us that every child deserves a childhood untainted by fear of predators and abuse. As technology races forward, so does Jane's mission. She envisions a future where cybersecurity isn't just a shield, but a sword, cutting through the anonymity that emboldens predators. Her work underscores the need for ethical tech development, where platforms prioritize user safety over profit, and AI is harnessed to detect and disrupt exploitation rather than enable it. Jane's legacy will be one of courage. She is a warrior who not only battles cyber threats, but also lights a way for a safer digital world. Through her tireless advocacy and what we're going to talk about today, she invites us all to join the fight to protect the innocence of today and to secure the promise of tomorrow. Before wrapping up the introduction of today's guest, I'd like to share just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, wanted to share any information privately with me, or if you are interested in submitting a written testimony for my upcoming book series or to be featured on a Substack article, you can reach out to me via email at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com or standbysurvivors@protonmail.com. Additionally, I've teamed up with a couple of my favorite brands to offer you guys exclusive discount codes on products I love, such as Rife Technology frequency machines and CZTL's premium methylene blue. You can find all the relevant links and codes along with other resources in the show notes. Your support across all platforms is greatly appreciated, especially as I've had to shift to alternative streaming platforms such as Rumble and X following the termination of my former YouTube channel. I've just recently started a new YouTube channel that you can subscribe to at the handle at Imagination Podcast Official that I will be and am rebuilding as well. This transition to multiple platforms is crucial to continue sharing vital information with the public and disclosure communities. Thank you all on the other side of the screen wholeheartedly for helping to make the Imagination Podcast the safest space on the internet for survivor, whistleblower, advocate, and educator disclosures. Your support means the absolute world to me and to every guest on this show. So, you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, whistleblower, warrior, anti-child abuse and survivor advocate, educator, selfless servant, and my dear friend, the one, the only, Jane. Jane, thank you
Oh
so
my
much for
goodness.
being here with us today. What an honor to have you on.
I'm gonna hire you to write all of my intros. I hope I live up to all of those expectations, but I am equally as excited to chat with you because there's gonna be a bunch of wonderful things that we're gonna go over, most of which are probably gonna be very terrifying but highly educational to all of the viewers, especially parents, because that is gonna be the focal point today with children being exposed on the internet. So
And
we will
this
go
topic
through a bunch
is
of different topics.
Yes, and this topic, I've been really excited to bring you on and talk to you about this. For people listening, I have known Jane for years. Obviously, if we're shielding her identity because what she's going to be talking about today, it's still part of her life to work in this field. So we want to keep her safe while help getting this information out. However, I've learned so much from you. I don't have kids, but in advocating for them, you realize just how much danger lurks. So many people are so focused on the external world and keeping their children safe, whether it's at school, whether it's, wherever children go, the playground, daycares. People don't think about the threats that exist right on their iPads and on their phones and on social media, aside from some of the dangers of maybe coming across child exploitation material if they're browsing a platform like YouTube. Some parents know about parental controls, which is great, but the depth that this goes with the internet is just so deep. And you are somebody that, with all of your experience and all the years that you have been in this field, you've seen the worst and you've also seen the best, and I think without knowing what the worst is, we can't understand how to correct it and how to prevent, these horrible things that you've seen from happening to children today. And then, to help sort of course correct it so it doesn't get worse by the time the next generation comes. It snowballs and the snowball just gets bigger. Like criminals don't stop. Like they get motivated when people don't know that they're committing crime, and what better place to hide if you're a child predator than behind a screen. And like I said, there's nobody better to talk about this subject than you. And so I thought maybe what we'd start with is for you to share a little bit about yourself and your journey through this cybersecurity world and maybe where your journey started and how you got into it and just talk about your career a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So the how I got into it was a little bit funny because I was one of those kids that loathed school. I was never going to go to college, and I was bound and determined, like, I'm not going to be one of those kids. And at the time, I was also hell bent on, moving out. And my mom was of the impression that if you're going to live in my house and you're not going to go to school after you graduate high school, then cool, you're going to pay me rent. And I thought that was like, oh my God, how dare you? Like, charge me rent as your daughter, right? Best thing that she ever did. Because then I was bound and determined to move out of the house, where I quickly realized that getting two jobs and working, roughly like 70 hours a week at minimum wage wasn't going to cut it. And that wasn't going to be the life that I was going to live. So I remember I came home bawling one day and I said, fine, I'll go to school, but I have no idea what I want to do. Well, apparently my mother was planning this conversation because she pulled out a pamphlet that she had went and got from the local tech school, and it was the microcomputer specialist program. Which, laughing at that program now, because so many years ago, like, it didn't train me for anything that I'm using today, which is hilarious. But her whole basis was She just looked at me and she said, "You basically fix every electronic in this house anytime something breaks. So why don't you just get into computers?" So I was like, "Fine. Okay, we'll just do that." And it was a 2-year program. So apparently, like my commitment issues with school, I could withstand 2 years and be fine. So I went in the 2 years and that kind of launched things from there. What was really interesting is when I moved out from my hometown into a bigger city, I went from, essentially like a help desk role into cybersecurity, essentially. But what was really interesting is at that time, that's kind of where I had my first exposure to, how sick people actually could be in the things that they did. Because when you're working help desk and you're fixing people's computers, those were the days when, good luck, because the second you go on a porn website, your machine's going to be compromised. Again, this is, well over 20 years ago. Get a call from this guy. He's having issues with his computer, and I take a look at it and come to find out, he literally had an entire folder structure of the different types of porn that he had saved on his machine. So when I escalated that to my boss and I was like, "Listen, I don't know what to do with this." And this is a conversation I will never forget because the sheer look on my face was, I'm sure, priceless. Because as I'm sitting in the VP of HR's office, along with the lawyer and my boss, and the physical computer that I'm holding in my hand that was this guy's machine, and we're talking to this guy's boss, the first thing out of his mouth was, "What are the timestamps on the images? Because if he was doing that after hours, what does it matter?" So you're using a work machine to look at porn, but you think it's okay because they're doing it after business hours. No. Then enters in the conversation, because again, and this is the part that people don't understand, where the legal ramifications come in, or the things that you don't realize that you're signing up for when you're getting an IT job, is that now the conversation enters into the topic of, are there any underage pictures of women in this whole library of things? So I immediately opted out for that investigation for all the reasons. I'm like, there's no way I'm scrubbing through these thousands of images to look for potentially someone that's underage, because you're legally required to report that to local authorities in the event that you find, underage pictures. And in that case, there wasn't. But I will tell you, in my career, I haven't personally seen it, but I've, talked to colleagues in multiple other, places and around the country, that type of thing. The number of people that have been prosecuted for having, minors, pornographic images on their machines is, astoundingly high. So that kind of opened the door to, okay, this is the world that we're playing in, and these are the things that go on. And the more that my career progressed and the more that I started, hyper focusing on the cybersecurity arena and getting into, like the e-com side, and, protecting websites from, bots and attacks, and that type of thing. That's where I really tried to understand, how are these tools catching these things, and what goes on with that. And then you start learning about artificial intelligence. And again, this was, many, many years ago. In that arena, that artificial intelligence was used proactively, right? Because you're trying to stop, bad actors from compromising your website or taking your website down, and protecting organizations. But when you look at the amount of information that those tools capture, what most people don't realize is that your device that you use, whether it's your computer or your phone or, tablet, anything else, it has an imprint, essentially like your fingerprint. It has an ID that lives on the internet, and it also has characteristics. Like if you look at, a 20-year-old female that has blue eyes and blonde hair and her fingerprint, those are all characteristics that make her up, and devices are no different. So when you start looking at artificial intelligence and the behavioral analytics that it can capture, you can start determining is this device lying about what device it is and what is it trying to access? And you can literally track that nationwide and globally because you can determine behavior patterns of these particular devices, what they've done, what you've seen them do in your environment, and that type of thing. So again, going those layers deep and then understanding, like to your point about how people and predators can show up literally as massless predators, trying to track them down in a digital arena. We're not living in the days anymore with pre-internet. In pre-internet days, which again, I mean, for people that don't know or need, kind of schematics for understanding some of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm in my 40s. So I was around before the internet existed. And those were the days when you had, in the grand scheme of things, a very small radius of people, right? You weren't exposed to the world, you were exposed to your immediate community. At most, you had maybe 150 people that were in your radius between your school, extracurricular activities, your family, friends, that type of thing. You weren't exposed to millions or thousands of people in every town, and I don't care how big or how small your town was. There was always, that one creepy guy that, you didn't go around, or the crazy lady's house that, you crossed the street and you didn't walk directly in front of. You knew who those people were in your local community that were just a little weird or creepy, or you just stayed away from them. And worst case scenario, what you had to worry about was, some, peeping Tom that would, hang around your bedroom window or whatever and look in your house. And when we moved out of that world and got thrown into the internet and social media, and I remember this because when email first came about, people laughed at it. They're like, who's going to email anybody when I can just call them or I can go to their house or I can talk to them? And the biggest risk that you had at the time was, running Napster or LimeWire and getting, feeling like you're going to have the feds bust in your house, right? Because you're downloading some song illegally. Like that was the thing everybody was afraid of. But today, what people have lost scope of is that full sense of security that comes in the internet because it's become a common thing, right? If you were to tell someone, "Oh yeah, I used to be able to go to the grocery store in the middle of winter and leave my car running," they would look at you like you're nuts because of crime rates. And that's not common to do anymore. Just like it's not common for people to be, apprehensive or think twice about what they're posting on the internet. And you hear about it all the time. Well, I didn't get this job, or I got fired because of what I posted online, or because they found out that I had an OnlyFans account, or whatever it was. Like we're living in an era where people living online and posting their full lives online, they don't understand that violations can happen as severe and as abrupt as someone literally breaking into your house and stealing your personal belongings. So when I look at, the evolution of the things that I've seen in my career from a cybersecurity perspective and people that I've worked in parallel to, especially in the fraud industry, and you realize the things that happen behind the scenes and in the dark world that we live in, it's not regulated in the same fashion of, again, when somebody breaks into your house, you can take fingerprints and there's evidence and you can take pictures and you know where that violation happened. You can probably tell them what, they stole out of your house, and there's tangible objects involved. When you're dealing with the internet and social media and all of these, social media companies, you're functioning in an abstract world and there's nothing that's tangible. And people lose scope of how big the risks are and how high the stakes are, especially when you're talking about children. And that's the part that I've kind of made it my mission more so this year to educate parents and let them know, like, hey guys, you need to understand that when you're posting that picture of your child, that can go from 0 to 100 in such a rapid rate. In, and this is the part where I will get flack from some parents. One, because I don't have children. So the common thing that I'll get from them is, well, you don't understand because, I have family and friends that follow me and I have a private account. So, I just want to share pictures with them. Okay, fine, but you're just because your account is private doesn't mean that other people can't see it. And again, going over some of the facts and statistics that I've gathered, in preparation for talking to you today, I think people are going to be alarmed with some of the things that I'm going to bring up, and the dark side that's really associated to that because there's predators everywhere. And in this virtual world, they're not going to show up and announce themselves because you can't see them. You don't even know that they're there. And just because they're not following your account doesn't mean that they're not looking it up and pulling those images down or screenshotting or screen recording those things because anybody can do that has a phone. And that's the scary part.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It's amazing how you've been able to see that evolution too. 20 years, 25 years, whenever you started your journey, like we were, the last generation to experience a childhood without technology to, now everything is online and on our phones. And you brought up a really good point when you were talking about how, before the whole tech boom, we were in these little incubated worlds. We had our community, we had our neighbors, we knew people's faces, we knew their information. A lot of times, especially if you grew up in kind of like a small town environment. But I think even in cities, there was an element of this because there wasn't online. Like you had to sort of navigate the world with the people around you. Where you look now, you go from everybody knowing their neighbors to everybody knowing everybody to now, instead of it being, why would you email me when you can call me? Now people say, why are you calling me when you can just send me a message on Instagram or DM me? Like, I'm here, I'm online. Like, I don't want to talk to you in this physical world anymore. Like, my world exists on this phone and on this computer and in these little digital spaces where we almost like take that safety that we felt with having a community close to us physically, and we've just taken those feelings and that safety and think that it still applies online because maybe we are just sharing our profile with those same people that were in our community, right? Like we feel like we're safe and incubated and like we have control on there, but to your point, I was really struck with how wrong that ideology is when I started talking about these topics that we are and are gonna talk about today, and started losing access to my accounts. I had multiple platforms say, "Oh, you're talking about this? We're gonna terminate you off of our platform." All of a sudden, my Facebook that I've had for over a decade with all my memories on it, all my friends from high school, like all my like most treasured memories of like growing up, just gone in an instant. No, I'm sorry. No, here's all your photos back. Like just gone. And I realized like, oh my gosh, like these people own my life whenever I put it on here. Like, yeah, I felt safe. Like I'm just sharing it with my community and my approved friends that I had on my profile. But at the end of the day, like they have access to that. It's now in their realm. As soon as it leaves my phone and like my physical world, as soon as I upload that onto my device and put it on a platform, it no longer is incubated in my little world that I've created. It's all of a sudden being given to something else that I can't even see. I can't even see all the people behind my screen. I just know I'm uploading it to my profile, and that felt so violating to me. It was like you said, it felt like somebody breaking into my house and stealing it, except I couldn't, like, there's nothing that I could do about it. I couldn't go file a police report and be like, Facebook took all of my memories from the last, 10 plus years. Like, this is horrible. I just had to deal with the fact that, oh, they don't like what I say. So now all my information, my data, my photos, my videos, my memories, my comments, my friend lists, my contact lists, every DM I've ever sent is no longer mine. Like, I just gave it to somebody and they just took it from me and locked me out of my world, and that really hit me. Like, it made me really realize and like, it sparked something in me to like really think about this topic that we're going to talk about, and to think about, gosh, like we are so used to that incubated community that, you and I knew growing up, and a lot of adults know if they grew up in sort of the same era that we did or before. but kids these days, like they don't understand that. Like from the time that they're born, like that is their community. You don't see kids outside playing much anymore. Like they're online too with us. Like we all have these like digital incubated what we think of as safe spaces where we're connecting with each other and connecting with community. And of course, it does serve these really great purposes. But, again, like it's not the same at all as to what we grew up with. It's not controlled. It's not private conversations anymore, neighbor to neighbor. It's not, like you said, having tangible evidence of like who gets to see your stuff, who's coming into your home, who is breaking into your home and taking stuff, and what are they taking. All of a sudden it's like, you're opening up this whole box of other nuances, and you're inviting other people into your life, people you can't even see, chains of people, companies, third party companies, like all the stuff that you're going to be talking about today. It's just really mind blowing how much we're not educated on it, and how we don't necessarily especially think of these things when it comes to children who like don't even have consent of like their life being put in other people's hands, and in what we're putting up with them. Like they're so young, like they don't even get to say whether or not we just like think that we're sharing things like really innocently, and don't realize that like, oh, like if this company were to terminate my profile right now, I don't get access to those photos anymore. Like they keep them, and it's really scary just to think of how many people like are literally breaking into our home 24 hours a day on our technology. And, we have no idea. We just think that it's like the safe space, and like that there's no danger on it as long as we have a private profile, or we're only sharing certain things or with certain people. And, it's really amazing what how wrong that ideology is. And I'm really excited for you to sort of crack this egg open for us. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can start with your sort of bullet points that you're going to talk about today. But I just want to thank you for bringing that up, because that is a really great point, that now that is our way that we talk to each other, is on there, and we really need to learn that landscape as well as we knew the one before we had these technological realities. Like we need to learn the ins and outs of it as much as we did our own communities before we had these devices.
Exactly. And I can give some statistics too, just so people can kind of understand the scope of what you're saying, especially when it comes to, this digital world that we're living in, and we'll say the proverbial geographical radius that actually, transposes. And I'll speak to specifically Facebook and Instagram because those are the two that are the most common, I think, with people. But Facebook alone has 7 data centers, two of which are located in Sweden and Denmark. So even within, the US, there's 5 located here, but globally, the second that you post something to Facebook, it can go in any one of those 7 data centers. So from again a geographical perspective, that's, we're not talking about something that's stored down the road or a place that we can actually go to, let alone access to, quote unquote, get our information. In 2021 alone, 533 million accounts were breached with Facebook. So when you look at from a sheer numbers perspective, again, if people operate under the basis of, that won't happen to me, or, I don't really have any information that people would want. And well, are you sure about that? Because again, what these people are looking for can be anything and everything. And they can be targeted attacks. It can be, grab all or nothing. It can be a whole gamut of different things. But again, numbers don't lie when it comes to these types of statistics. And, again, from Facebook's perspective, hundreds of thousands of accounts are hacked on a daily basis. So again, when people are operating under the assumption of, I'm just, little Susie living in my small town and, posting cute little things, okay, maybe you losing your account isn't going to be that big of a deal, but you will still feel that level of violation, especially if you're posting things that are, what you would consider to be personal and private to you. Instagram, because of, the bond between them and Facebook, they share those same data centers. So again, you're talking from a global perspective where that data is being stored, and then there's backups, where those backups being stored. When you're talking geographically around the world, that part is super important for people to understand from a pure jurisdiction standpoint. And I'll cover that a little bit later. But when you are violated and when a cybercrime does actually happen, that jurisdiction is important because when you're talking about a company that operates globally, you can't go down to your local police department and file a report and expect them to do something. They don't have jurisdiction. So again, when you're posting images of your children, and you might think, well, it was just me, so that violation is fine, no big deal. But now enter in pictures of your children, videos of your children, anything like that where you're talking about minors, now we're in a different ballgame. And there was a study that was done in 2025 that estimated that an IG account is hacked every 10 minutes. That's over 50,000 accounts per year. And again, that could be on the high end, it could be on the low end, but even those numbers alone should be startling to people. And there was a highlighted data breach that was done by CISO Mag, and they accounted for over 49 million users that had, their accounts breached, and that was discovered by a security researcher. So again, you have someone that's outside of that org that determined that that breach even happened and that you have, 49 million users that have their accounts compromised. There was also one scenario where there was a C-level executive whose wife actually had her iPhone breached. Now, again, iPhones and Apple supposed to be the most secure platform, the most secure company, and she called her husband in a panic because as she was going through her photos, she's seeing photos of the person that hacked into her account posting in her photo reel, and they had access to everything. So again, you think about if your phone is compromised, the amount of personal information that you have on your phone, we're operating in a different landscape right now with the world that we live in, where we're either living our lives on the internet and posting everything up to these third party companies like Instagram and Facebook, TikTok. I mean, pick your social media platform, and then people will come back and be, well, I don't do social media. Okay, but you still have a phone. You still have a phone with all these personal, pictures and those types of things. The second that you're on board with technology in any capacity and you have a quote unquote smartphone, or God forbid, a smart house, you've got cameras everywhere, you've got images that are being captured. Where are they being saved? You're no longer dealing with the confines of the four walls in your proverbial house, right? You don't get to play by the same rules. So the part that I try and highlight to people is when you're talking about taking that picture on your phone, that phone, say you have an iPhone. Now you're dealing with Apple. Where does Apple save and store everything? Well, in their iCloud. Again, another data center. So not only is it on your phone, it's up in Apple's cloud. Those are 2 points of entry right there. You have no idea who works at any of those Apple facilities or who has access or what third parties they have hired or contracted to come in and do work on their behalf. And again, that's all important to keep in mind because you are not just keeping that image on your phone and storing it to your iCloud. You are giving access to that information by any predator that would potentially come in contact, either direct or indirectly, with each of those transactions. So now you take that picture, you take that video, it's on your phone, it's saved to your iCloud. Okay, fine. Now we're going to post it to Instagram. Again, going back to the 7 data centers that Instagram and Facebook have globally. Who works at those facilities? What third-party companies have they hired to do work on their behalf? And guess what? Newsflash, anybody that's part of their cybersecurity team or that works as some sort of, admin on their IT teams, they've got access to everything by design, because if there's a breach, those are the people that have to get in and triage those things. Guess what? The chances of there being a predator in that schema somewhere, highly likely. So now you've posted to Instagram. Now that's populated to seven other data centers, and you have now exposed that to the entire world. So anybody can screenshot that, anybody can screen record that. Any of those data centers that are breached, any of the platforms that are hacked, if your phone is compromised, those are all points of entry. So it's not, again, it's not somebody breaking through your front door with a 1-to-1 ratio that you can physically see and physically fill out a police report and gather evidence. You've now just magnified the threat landscape for where your information, especially pictures of your children, are being posted. And here's my biggest problem with Instagram in social media and Facebook and TikTok and in general. Legally, you can look up and say, what age is required to have a social media account. 13 with a little asterisk after it. 13 years old, you can have an Instagram account or Facebook or whatever it is. But oh, by the way, you can do it at a younger age as long as you've got parental consent. So there's your stipulation right there. And the part that's so frustrating for me with that is that there are legal laws written to protect children from being exposed on the internet. So you've got these stipulations that say you have to be X number of years old, but with parental consent. But on the flip side, nobody's going after parents or holding parents accountable for posting pictures of their children or videos or that type of thing, again, to the internet. So when you're talking about, who's responsible and where do the laws come in and, who's where are we pointing fingers and, all that good stuff, it gets to be a very, very gray area. And there's a couple examples that I'll bring up, and I won't name the accounts because I feel like that would be sort of contradictory to like protecting children. But there's a 12-year-old on Instagram that has an account with 85,000 followers. Do you think that child knows at 12 years old? Do you think he knows the 85,000 people that are following him on the internet? Absolutely not. But again, going back to the law that's written for the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, that states that you should be 13 years old in order to have an Instagram account or Facebook or any social media platform. Again, asterisk, but as long as your, parent consents to it, then okay, fine. The parents that consent to that and actually allow their children to have a following that large makes my skin crawl. Because again, you have no idea who these people are that are following your child. And if you were to say, here's an arena, I'm going to bring you to a concert arena with 85,000 people in there. Are you going to drop your 12-year-old child off? Probably not. They would look at you like you're nuts, or they would think, in what state of mind would you have to be in to think that I would be okay with dropping my 12-year-old off in a room of 85,000 people and leaving? Well, guess what? That's exactly what you're doing when you have a social media platform and you're exposing your child to people that you don't know. In any of those accounts, they can be whoever they want to be. You can have a 40-year-old male that is a full-blown pedophile, registered sex offender, painting a picture that he's a 12-year-old girl following this 12-year-old boy. You have no idea what that person's actually doing because again, in the beautiful world of the internet, you can be whatever you want to be and you can present however you want to present. So the part that blows my mind, especially with, parents posting pictures of their children, we went through this whole, and I think we're still in the middle of it, but I'm hoping we're on the downfall of that. But we were having these parents literally bring their children in for surgery, for gender reassignment surgery, and these children's bodies being mutilated and body parts cut off and all these types of things and being pumped with hormone blockers or other types of hormones. And we were outraged with that. But yet in the same breath, we're okay when Susie posts pictures of, little baby, Sally. And that's okay because, oh, she's so cute. in the world that we live in, again, because I'm severely jaded with my job and the things that I've seen, people don't understand. And this is the part where, things start getting dark from a topic conversation. And I think a lot of people avoid it because they can't imagine that there's people out there that exist like that would do such things, and they can't envision something like that being done with their child. But you can take an image, and I've shared, some examples of these software programs that you can use to do it. But you can take an image of, say you post a picture of your 5-year-old. You can take that image, you can then overlay that with, I'm going to use whatever mannerisms I want that child to be doing in a video, and picture whatever you want to picture, whether they're doing sexual acts, performing sexual acts, whatever that is. You can use your own mannerisms, or overlay that with, some porn video or whatever you want. And now you have blended, and it's taken that picture of your 5-year-old, overlaid it with whatever porn video you want to blend that with. And now your 5-year-old girl has a porn video that's on the internet. In a matter of minutes, that can happen. So when you're talking about what the ramifications are, then you get into again, the threat landscape that we were talking about with, you've got it on your phone, it's in the iCloud, it's posted to Facebook, it's posted to Instagram, it's now across 7 data centers worldwide, and you have no idea who has access to that. And the part that people continue to forget about are these third parties. And I'll give you another example, although it's unrelated, but the concept still remains the same. There was recently a CEO of a cybersecurity company, ironically, that was arrested April 14th for inducing malware into a hospital. Now, why he did it, no idea. I don't know what his, I guess, initiative was there, or what, triggered him to do that. But the ironic part is that that cybersecurity company that he was the CEO of, that him being the CEO and getting arrested, he was hired by the hospital. That company was hired by the hospital to come in and do their work. And we see that all the time in my industry. Cybersecurity contracts through third parties all over the place. Call centers, India, right? There's places all over the world that people will use, and large company will use from a contracting perspective, that have access to your systems. So without knowing all of those third party relationship, who's got access to what, who can come in, it's not a war against, your Instagram account getting, compromised, or some Instagram follower screen recording your child or whatever that is and turning it into something absolutely, a total profanity. You're chasing a ghost in that arena. So that's the part that I caution parents on, is you need to understand there are sick people out there. They're all over the place. And when you're posting your information and personal images of your child and sharing them to these third party applications like social media applications, that you've just opened the floodgates for the amount of places that video gets shared, stored, copied, and you have no idea who's accessing that account, because they don't even need to hack your account. They can access it through any of these third parties, through any of these places, and you will never know. And I can't imagine sitting down with, my 12-year-old daughter, explaining to her, because she just went viral on the internet for a porn film and is being made fun of by kids at school. And once it's there, you're not gonna, you can't scrub the entire internet and have that video removed. That will come back and haunt her literally for the rest of her life. And although it's a virtual act, basically, of sexual abuse, she's still going to live with that her entire life. And guess who she's going to look at? Mom and dad. You posted that. You started it. How are you going to look at your child in the face and say, I'm sorry, mommy just wanted to get clout on my social media post and, get all those likes or get that commission check from that company for that sponsored post, whatever it is. We've skirted this world of sharing in these quote unquote digital communities to now using children as props. And that's the part where I really lose my shit is when I see women specifically. And there's another example of this, and I'm surprised that social services hasn't been called yet, although I think they've tried to do legal action a couple times. There's a TikTok account of a girl. Now, this girl was born in 2019. She is 5 years old. She has 17 million followers on TikTok. Her mom uses that entire account to have her eat certain foods like bananas in front of the camera, post those videos, dresses up in costume outfits, puts makeup on her. In my opinion, people like that should be arrested because you're literally exploiting your child for views and God knows what else. And that girl is 5 years old. You think she can make adult decisions on what her security and protection should look like for online? No. And that's one example. I'm sure there are hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of accounts that are out there that are like that. Or worst case scenario, someone has opened up an account of one of your children and you don't even know it's there yet. You wouldn't even have to be the person that's doing it. They could just be taking images off of your account and posting that. That's the part where I have to be very, very careful and not, start just basically attacking parents online. But this is the part, and there's been other scenarios of this too, but just putting things in perspective, because I went and looked up registered sex offenders. And there are apps that you can download so that you can see the number of people in your area and that type of thing. But what's alarming is here are the numbers. So again, think in the scope of you're posting something to the world or putting things up on the internet, and these are the people that you're exposing your children to. As of at least what I pulled up today, there are 795,000 registered sex offenders in the US. So those people have access to your child. There are 450,000 in India. Those people have access to your child. There are roughly almost 13,000 in Australia, and those are only the countries that are legally calculating that information or capturing that data. There are countries that just don't even capture it. So we don't even know globally the second that you hit post on that image of your child and put it up on social media, how many predators, and those are the ones that we know about,
Yeah,
right?
those are like
Those
just the people that got caught. That's not even
that's
how
that's
many.
that's what I'm saying. Those are the people that you are giving instant access to your child. Who knows where they're working, if they are working, if they're working at one of those data centers or one of those third party companies that have like you have no idea how they're getting in, how they could get in, or what they actually have access to with your child, even if you're not posting on social media and all you're doing is taking pictures and texting and sending them to your friends. That's the risk when it comes to the digital world that we're living in some of those statistics. And that's the part, again, from a legal perspective, that there should be laws. And again, I think the area is pretty gray, but I think they're absolute black and white cases, like that TikTok account that I talked about with that 5-year-old and 17 million followers. That's blatant exploitation. Like you're blatantly exploiting your child. It's disgusting. It makes my skin crawl. And that mother should be locked in jail and basically classified as a pedophile at that standpoint because of what she's doing to that 5-year-old girl. There was another case that and this one is the one that blew up when I had shared it, and the number of people that were just absolutely disgusted. But there was another male, we'll call him an influencer, who had a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old daughter. And he goes and does these, speaking events and, brings all these guys in, again, primarily a male adult audience. Okay. Brings his 9 and 12-year-old daughters on stage and has them undress, meaning taking their jackets off on that stage, exposing their abs because they're promoting themselves as being a fitness family. At one point during that interaction, he told his daughter, "Stop being so shy and just show them." You know what? When your child is shy, it's because they're not comfortable. They don't want to be there. That's like, are you going to go around and force your little girl to hug every person that comes up by her? No. If that child doesn't want to touch somebody, and they should be comfortable hugging strangers anyways, let alone exposing their abs to an adult audience of men. Like, again, another scenario where that guy should have been immediately prosecuted and social services should have been brought in, or CPS. Like, something needs to be done from a legal perspective to hold some of these people accountable for the things that they're willingly exposing their children to. And again, when you cross that line and you start using that child as a prop at a paid event that people are paying to come and see, I mean, you might as well auction off your child. Then we're back to the slave days where you're purchasing people, right? Walk up on stage, buy your ticket, highest bidder wins. Disgusting. 9 and 12 years old.
That's absolutely horrific. And, for people who listen to my podcast, a lot of my guests were used in child exploitation and pornography material as children. And I know the world doesn't want to believe that this is something that is prevalent, but it is, and it's a massive, massive business. I've even been told that trafficking and exploitation material of children and the like, everything that, can be sold in the whole trafficking arena when it comes to children, whatever it is, it's a bigger business than drugs, and children you can use more than once, which is, why it is. Children can be put through the ringer and, used over and over and over again, even if it's just on TikTok, and as you're talking about that, I'm like, that's literally trafficking. Like, she's making money off of the exploitation of her child, but you also look at when parents, I've gotten this from a couple parents, I'm sure you have too, but my children are clothed in the pictures. I don't post naked pictures. I don't post pictures of them in their underwear and their diapers. Well, guess what? Like you just said, Jane, there are programs that can now remove that clothing. Even if it's a whole winter gear, you can now remove all of that. A predator can make your child be completely naked and can do whatever they want with it. It doesn't matter what your child is wearing. And that's not something that is going to keep your child safe by putting them online if they're clothes. Like, it doesn't matter, predators will find a way to create material from your child, and ultimately now your child is in a trafficking ring. Like, now your child, the material that has been created from your child is now being sold, monetized on these dark webs that you'll never know about. Or you will, maybe the video surfaces like you said, and it's something somebody leaks on the internet, goes viral, and, now that child has to live with that for the rest of their life, but the repercussions for this, like you said, to just get some likes and to be able to share. I know that people, like most people, are not like that TikTok mom that I've met that her parents are online, where they are, putting their children on purpose in these compromising exploitation, slash abuse type scenarios. Most parents mean well. That is how we connect. A lot of people don't live by family or with family directly, or they have family that lives elsewhere. So I understand the need to want to connect, but to do it without understanding the repercussions, it's one thing to share our life or to write a caption about something or to put children, that are of age, 18 and older, a young adult, if you have consent from somebody that's an adult to put online, that's so much different than, compromising your child and basically just feeding this information to predators. And these things that you're saying are just so, it like makes my heart start beating when I think about, those numbers that you were saying for sexual predators who have, been caught, and to think that that's just who's been caught, and we know that that's just like a very small percentage of the predators that are out there that have actually been caught. Like, surprisingly to a lot of people, like these aren't dumb people, most of them, and that's definitely talked about on my podcast. Like a lot of predators, they have to be very smart in order to not get caught. They maneuver themselves into society, and most of them are psychopaths. So they can easily have no emotion about what they're doing. They can show up and be the life of the party, the CEO of the company. They hide really easily in society. They're not the people that you see on TV. And even if you were to look at their profiles online, you'd probably think that they're normal people. Like they're very, very intelligent people, which is disgusting. One of my podcast guests calls it radical intelligent evil. And that's exactly what it is. Like it's an evil that is very intelligent, that slithers its way in and goes completely unnoticed. And that's why, like, hindsight's always 2020 with predators. Most of the time, like, you don't even know that something bad is happening to your child until after. And sometimes it might not even be till decades down the road when they finally, have the courage to talk about it or remember it, but to just think about these scenarios that we're putting our children in. And you said it perfectly. Like, would you go take your child, put them in a room full of 85,000 people and just leave and be like, see you later. I don't know any of these people. You don't either, but go hang out, go do what you do and I'll be back, in a little bit. Or I'm just going to leave you here 24/7 because that's what I do online. Like we don't think about the external and the I guess the external consequences for what we're doing on like an internal server. We think that that information is just all ours, that it's just being shared with people. It's not a big deal. At the end of the day, it's still ours. We have control over it. Our children aren't naked. They're not doing anything weird. We're just posting photos. But like, that's not a problem for predators. Like predators, if they want children, like they will find any way possible to get material in order to satisfy their psychopathic needs and the needs of people who could also, who might also buy it from them or who they can share it with. Like this is a very mafia-ish type criminal syndicate that we're dealing with here. And these are very sophisticated people, right down to, like you said, the person working at these third-party companies could easily be a predator. Like, what better place for a predator to hide? But I wanted to comment on that because I think, too, like, there are a lot of excuses that people can give. And I think no matter what your excuse is, like, it's never going to be good enough just because there's these predators now they have technology to get around all the barriers that we used to have. We have every single way to combat if they're wearing a snowsuit or if it's just, a picture of them that's like super innocent. Well, a predator can turn that into exploitation material and can completely strip away any type of innocence that you put on the internet. As soon as it's posted, it's no longer innocent, regardless, because there's no stipulations on what a person can do with that picture now that it's on the internet.
Well, and that's just the thing. And the part that people don't necessarily understand is that the best manipulators that I have ever seen have perfected the art of sales. They will pitch you the best sale and you will buy it hook, line, and sinker. And that's kind of the tragedy. And I empathize genuinely for, moms. Again, I don't have kids, but I think especially in this era that we're living in today, the stay-at-home moms and moms in general and having children is almost deemed as, lower class living. Oh, you're just a stay-at-home mom, like you're not actually working. And they have this massive lack of community because again, we don't live the same today that we did 20 years ago or 30, 40 years ago. Children were raised in communities. You knew the next door neighbors and you knew the people three blocks down. In the community raised those children and they looked out for those children and they watched out for things. And if something bad happened, your neighbor would let you know or they would intervene in those types of things. So I think the problem has kind of propagated because moms specifically they've lost that community and they've lost that feeling, and as a society we haven't supported that and we haven't brought back the the critical role that that plays in communities in raising literal future generations of this country. So what do they do? And what's the easiest pathway for them to go? Well, that's to connect on social media. And the part that I always encourage people to do is that you can still share what it's like to be a mom and the challenges and the highlights and, all the things in between without exposing your child's face. That's the beauty of technology is you can play defense and blur the pictures or, not have your child directly in frame or not have them directly in the pictures and those types of things. You can still share those experiences without exposing your children. And you can still create that community without putting, some, criminal in front of your child. So there's ways to do it. It's just, again, understanding here's the threat landscape. The seriousness of the nature of the world that we're living in today. These are the dark things that can happen in the web and the predators that are out there. So now we have to play defense and operate differently. And I think once people start understanding that, yes, I'm not here to shame people for, wanting to post, their kids' stuff or share their experiences and that type of thing. That's not it at all. What I am cautioning on is you can do that without exposing your children to predators that are literally faceless people. And the part that I want people to really understand, and another example that I can give that I went through talking about similar things with, who has your hands in the pot and who are these third parties and these other companies that have access to your information and all that type of thing. One of the companies that I worked for a couple years ago, and this was quite a while ago now, but they used ADP to process payroll. And if people aren't familiar with what ADP is, ADP is one of the largest payroll processing companies that are out there for businesses to use. So when you get your, check electronically deposited, it'll typically go through a company like ADP that handles your payroll. Well, what do they need to process payroll? They need your name, they need your address, they need your bank information. It's kind of an all access pass to your personal information. So ADP had a breach. I got a call and they told me, "Hey, oh by the way, did you recently update, your banking information?" Now, mind you, this was 2 days before payroll was supposed to drop. So 2 days before I was supposed to get paid. And I said, "No, I haven't changed any of my banking information." And they said, "Well, log into your ADP account." And I was locked out. I couldn't log into my account. And they told me that ADP had contacted them because they thought that there was something going on with their systems. And my account was one of the accounts that was flagged for the number of login attempts and the number of, incorrect login attempts. And then, transactionally, my banking information changing. So long story short, they verified that I did actually have identity theft. They again had access to my name, my social security number, my address, my banking information. They had access to everything. So I immediately went and got LifeLock, which basically is identity theft protection, and it can be set up across all your accounts, including social media, to detect any fraud-like type of transactions, and it will alert you. And that blew up within hours of the number of accounts that were trying to be opened underneath my name, and those types of things. But again, my personal information b- was grabbed by someone on the internet that was trying to reroute my payroll to some bank in India. Well, they ended up getting my account back and, my payroll came through and all that was fine and dandy. But here's the part with identity theft is that if someone were to actually freeze my assets or go and take out a mortgage loan or put a lien on whatever that I didn't know about because again they have all my information. They could run a credit report and find out where I have all of my other accounts and they have free reign to get whatever they want of mine if they choose to do that. So, in order to protect myself, in the event that something worse happened after the fact, I had to file a police report. So I go down to the local police station. They look at me like I am an alien. when I tell them that I have to fill out a police report for identity theft. Because what happens when what happens when a crime is committed? They want to know where it happened, they want to know when it happened, and they want to know if you know the person that did it, and they want to know what they stole. Well, they didn't technically steal anything from me. I don't know who they were. We have a vague time estimate as to when this happened, and everything is fixed now because I have my account back. Okay, so what do you want us to do with this? And I'm like, I need to file a police report. So I go back and forth with them for a couple hours. Then they finally tell me you actually need to go to the sheriff's office. Okay, so I go out to the sheriff's office the next day. They don't know what to do with me. They've never filled out a police report for identity theft. Again, intangible object, because there's no broken glass, there's no vehicle that was damaged, there was no door that was kicked in on my house. There's intangible information that somebody violated on the internet, and I have to fill out a report. They don't know what to do with it. Two more visits out there, and another day later, they finally get the police report or the sheriff's report filed. And all of the people that I talked to, which in total I think was like five or six individuals, told me that this is the first time that they've ever done it. Why is this important to the context of what we're talking about here? In the event that you find out that an image of your child was turned into, we'll say, a pornographic video and published to the internet, you are literally chasing a ghost. Because if we go back to what we were talking about before with regard to all of the data centers that Instagram and Facebook have across the world, now you're talking about a global issue. Well, that's a federal offense. If they consider it a federal offense, because your local police department can't go after someone that has a video stored in some server in Sweden or some other location, right? From a legal perspective, the jurisdiction and the capabilities of what our law enforcement and, FBI and all of those agencies, the capabilities that they have, number one, they're not equipped to deal with the general population. So if you have tens of thousands of people that report that their children have been exposed on the internet, they don't have the manpower to be able to go after those people because, again, you're chasing ghosts. And as someone who, now I directly have not done forensics work, I participated in forensics investigations before. The amount of time that it takes to actually sift through the amount of data to figure out where, like, you're literally looking for little digital traces of information where that bad actor operated, or where they may have copied a file, or where something may have been moved, or all of those types of things. There's a reason why security breaches on a global scale aren't reported until months after they actually find out what happened, because that's how long it takes. That's how long it takes when these companies actually have breaches to determine how large the breach is, how many people were impacted, what files were accessed, what information was compromised. Companies have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to have specialized forensics teams come in to do those types of investigations. And you think that the FBI or your local police department or anybody else has the manpower to deal with that? They don't. So the part that is the most alarming to people, in the part that I cannot stress enough, is that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When that happens to your child, if you think that you feel powerless in that moment, wait until you try to get validation, and wait until you try and get some sort of revenge, because it ain't happening. And the worst part about it is that once something is published on the internet and once it's live, it's there forever, because it can hop from any number of servers to platforms to people's home computers, you name it. It can be anywhere and all over the place. And that will be out there for forever. the lack of agency that we have to be able to combat that from a reactive standpoint and not on the proactive perspective, it's not our ability to be able to prosecute those types of crimes has not advanced at the rate that technology has or artificial intelligence. And even from an artificial intelligence perspective, you're kind of taking something that is real and something that isn't real, morphing those worlds together, and then trying to find who touched that file, who accessed it, who created it. And when you have the capabilities to screenshot things and screen record things, going back to what I talked about early on, that, your device essentially has a fingerprint and has, behaviors about it, if you will, depending on what you use your device for, that all changes the second that somebody else screen records something or somebody else screenshots something, because now that information transfers. So where's the origin video? How many times was it copied? How many times was it recorded? What other places was it stored? That you're almost talking about entering into the world of chasing infinity because of how fast information propagates and all the different places that it can. So, from a parent's perspective, again, when you look at, and to your point, where, trafficking, I mean, that industry alone, and from, I don't know if it was trafficking specifically or if it was like just porn in general, but the US is the largest consumer. And even the statistics that I read off before, when you talk about the number of registered sex offenders, the US was at 795,000. India was at 450. That's half. So the US is double on that side. So again, if you think that you're safer here in a world where we have the biggest consumer, that, like, it's not happening. It's just not happening. So that's the part that I encourage parents to understand, is that you can still have a community and you can still have connections and you can still create this space digitally where you don't feel alone in, your parenting efforts and the challenges that go with it and that type of thing, without compromising that child. They don't need to be front and center. Their faces don't need to be shown. And the beauty of technology is that just as other people can manipulate it in a negative fashion, you can manipulate that information in a proactive capacity to blur their face or to, again, not show them, or to change the sound of their voice so their real voice isn't shown. All of those things that you can do proactively if you still choose to participate in, the wonderful world of social media. There's ways that you can protect your child, again, without compromising them or putting them in front of the predators that we know of and those that we don't, because that's the other part that people don't understand. Those numbers that we talk about, those are the instances that are recorded. It's the unrecorded incidents and the unrecorded predators that we know that are out there. They just haven't been caught yet.
100%. And then you think about, the comfort that people have had with sharing and how parents now, they're not just sharing their own kids a lot of times, especially if they have these private accounts that they're sharing with community and this sort of like incubated world, but they're sharing cousins, they're sharing their children's friends, they're sharing pictures of them at school and at sporting events and with all these other children, whether the children are, willingly in the photo with their arm around their kid, as friends, or whether it's you're recording somebody else's child, without the other parent's consent even, and then posting that online. And then you think about all the different ways that, schools now do a lot of things digitally, digital yearbooks, they'll put up, different school statistics. You can watch, some schools have, live games that you can watch online where, you don't even have to go to the game. You can just watch it, you can stream it live. And so you think of all these ways too that technology has made things easier for us. Again, we get to share, we get to have community, we can watch, and see things that our children's accomplishments and photos that they're taking at school from online. Teachers now sometimes can, upload photos of their kid during the day to different portals. I've heard of all these different ways now that, photos and videos of children, even from the outside of the home, are now being placed online for the parents to have more interaction with the kids. I wanted to get your opinion on that. Is there ways that, um, can parents maybe ask for, or would you recommend a parent says, I'd like to opt out of this if my child goes to this school. I don't want to have their photos online. Should parents openly communicate that to their own friends and say, hey, I know you want to take videos of your kid at the game. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but please leave my child out of it. Like, how can we combat these other ways that our children are being accessed and posted?
Yeah, and the part for me, I think that's the hardest is if it were me, I would be at every single school board meeting and I would make it a school policy that minors can't be recorded. And I honestly don't even know how we've gotten this far with being so loose in that capacity. Because again, this is the part that blows my mind because you know damn well it would not go this way. But if you're at your, local park with your kids and some dude walks up and starts filming your child, you're probably not going to be excited about it, right? Just like you don't know who's in that stadium, you don't know who those people are. Everybody whips out their phones and everybody's recording. You don't know who those people are. You have no idea. So the fact that they even allow that in schools, again, with minors, is baffling to me. And here's the part that people don't understand what can happen on the flip side of that. And although this isn't child related, the same scenario applies. There was a woman that posted, and I forget what the context of the video was. I think it was someone going off about, basically how gyms have become, filming studios, right? Everybody's got their phone out, they're filming their workout, they're doing all the things, whatever. And she was going off about this topic, but there was another girl in the comment that shared that her stalker found her through another woman's video that she captured at a Pilates class. So he started following this other woman because again, like you only really need to know a couple pieces of information. And as somebody that can literally stalk people on the internet, it's not that hard to find people. It takes minutes for me to get one, maybe two pieces of information, and I can figure out who you are or figure out who you're friends with, if you're married, if you're not, if you have a dog, like I can find out a lot of information without using any security tools in a matter of minutes. But she ended up having her stalker find her and she had a restraining order filed. He attacked her because he ended up figuring out when she was going to the gym, what gym she was going to, what Pilates class she was in, because other people were filming it. So here's the part that people don't understand is that third party interaction and the people that you were, filming in the background, if you're not blurring them out or you're not asking their permission and you're just doing it willy-nilly, and the sad part about it is you know damn well the first person that says, I don't want to be in your video, you're going to be labeled as the Karen, right? You're going to be labeled as the person that's making it, frumpy for everybody else because, it's just a video. What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal when you're talking about scenarios like that. Now, is that common? No. Does it happen? Yes. So people need to understand that when you are indirectly going in and filming, especially with children, I don't even know how that's allowed because you're filming minors. I don't even know how the schools permit that. But if it were me, I would be going into the school and I would be saying, this is how this is going to run. Now, how they would control that at sporting events and that type of thing, I have no idea other than the fact that the only way that I think that they could do that is they'd have to have it controlled who can be in the games, which people won't like, and the schools probably won't like because they make money on the concession stand sales and all the things that go with it. Obviously, schools need to make money, and I understand that part. But there has to be some, control mechanism. But that's where I go back to as a community, we have to keep ourselves accountable. If I'm going to, a game like that and I'm sitting in the stands and, somebody whips out their camera and they start, filming their grandson or their grandkid or whoever it is, check them, say something. My whole philosophy is see something, say something. The less people start these conversations and the more that they avoid being confrontational and saying something, that's the main problem. And I think the more awareness that is called out to this particular topic and people are presented with, do you understand that this is what happens? Do you understand that this is what can go on? But again, I think there has to be some, policing horizontally amongst each other to say, yeah, we don't do that here. That's not how we run it here. And just as you know, all it takes is one parent to open that can of worms and bring that topic to the table. And other people are going to start thinking twice. Other people are going to start being like, why, yeah, why aren't we doing that? Why are we publicizing this? Why is this open to the internet? And why can everybody come in and film my child or take pictures of my child or whatever it is? No, again, I mean, I think, are you going to get it perfect and are you going to get to, zero exposure? No. But the point is to limit that exposure. I mean, again, I grew up in the day when, you had picture day at school and you got hard copies of pictures and you brought them home and you had your one whole class picture. That was the only picture that you had of some other, other people's kids. And that was in the day when the only thing you really worried about is to make sure you didn't have some creepy dude at the local Walgreens that was developing your film, right? Like, and if you did, then he brought it somewhere else and brought it to another place. But this digital world that we're living in, it's a lot of it is creating awareness to the situation and reducing the exposure. And I think more conversations need to be had with these school boards in these schools to say, why are we exposing pictures of minors? And why do we allow people taking, videos of other people's children? Why is that allowed? And I can't imagine that there aren't laws out there protecting that in some capacity. But then again, you look at the laws that I was talking about before from an online perspective, and you can throw stipulations in there, and you can throw an asterisk saying, "Oh, but with parent consent." Well, now what happens? Because if you have a team of 15 kids and nine of those parents consent, then what? Is it a majority vote where the majority wins? I don't know the answer to that. So I think it starts with you have to have conversations with the schools. You have to start educating them. And if nothing more, people like me going in and educating the schools and getting them to understand, listen, guys, you need to understand what's really going on here. And you need to walk into this digital world on the dark side and realize what these children are being exposed to, whether you mean to do it directly or indirectly, it doesn't matter. But the problem still remains. The risk happens the second that you hit post to the internet. You've now lost control and you don't have a say anymore. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think from a parent's perspective, I would be in talking to the school board, I would be talking to other parents, and I would be getting, I would be getting them to a point where people are on board and understanding, yeah, if we're going to do this, it's going to be in a controlled environment. This is how we're going to control it. And at least again, you're reducing scope. Because like I said, my expectation is you're not going to walk into a school and everybody's dumping their cell phones in some bucket that you pick up at the end of the day. Like that ain't happening. Parents aren't going to do that. You're always going to have someone that's going to break the rules or, whatever. But when you can reduce the scope of the risk and reduce that landscape of those threats, now you're talking about a different ballgame. And again, that's at least one step in the right direction. And who knows, maybe you get some nationwide law that's passed that says, yeah, from a school perspective, you're not allowed to do these things. And if you're found guilty, then, there's prosecution or, you actually break a law just like everybody else. But yeah, I think this age that we live in where we have just gotten so comfortable operating, basically like the Kardashians, walk in and be with me from the time I get up until the time I go to sleep and sharing everything, including our kids. We've gotten way too comfortable, not just from an exposure perspective, but people don't even pay attention to you're literally showing your location. You're showing where your child is going to school or where you guys are doing activities or telling people that you're traveling and doing all of these things. Again, it doesn't take much for people to figure out where you are or how you've developed your daily habits or places that you go. And going back to, the risk of, these people that work in these third party agencies or that are contractors with these companies, let me just tell you, the cybersecurity tools that I have access to and the tools that I've used in my past, I can get all of your shit in seconds. So if I'm not an ethical person and I don't have some moral ground, I can get your browser history. I don't even need to know you. All I need is your social media handle, maybe an email address. If I got your phone number, it's a field day because I can get all of your information. I can tell what your browsing habits are. I can tell what websites you visited to. I can get your usernames and passwords for all of your accounts. I can get all of it. Because again, when you think about what cybersecurity tools are designed to do, it's designed to report on bad actors and bad behavior. So if you have accounts that are compromised or passwords that are breached, you're going to want to protect executives at your office, right? You're going to want to let them know proactively, hey, your password credentials have been detected on, the dark web. So go change all your shit. Well, on the flip side of that, if nobody's telling them and all of you had a breach, you're one of the, tens of millions of people that had your account breached. How many people are using the same password over and over and over again? Everybody does. So this one breach that you have, now that person can get access to all of your stuff. So it's not even about what you can control and what you can't control. It's about something as simple as a breach happening. And now they've got access to your email, they've got access to your bank accounts, they've got access to potentially your phone. It just depends on what it is. But again, from my standpoint, with the tools that I've used, tools I've seen others use, and the power and information that's in those tools, the amount of data collection that I could do from an unethical standpoint is terrifying. But again, I clearly operate with a set of ethics and morals, so I'm not going to do that. I know I'm not going to do that. But again, you're trusting that people are going to operate on the same moral ground with the same ethics that you are, and that doesn't happen. It just doesn't. So when you're talking about the gamut of these social media companies and the third parties and where your information is stored and how many data points it actually goes through, think of all of that landscape. That's the exposure. So reducing that in any capacity, again, it's a step in the right direction. In those little steps that we take, and the more that you start compounding that, and the more that you start creating that awareness, that's how you start getting communities getting brought together. That's how you start getting family to, protect each other. Not that they're not doing it now, but they're doing it in a different capacity, and they're more aware of what's happening. But yeah, I think we have to, as a digital community and as people that see those things going on, I go back to that philosophy of see something, say something. And the second that you start saying something, and that was probably the best thing that I saw happen. And, not that I ever want to like cause contention for anybody else on the internet or, join the proverbial cancel culture group, right? But that guy that brought his 9-year old and his 12-year old on stage, I shared that video, and the amount of people that went to his account and just destroyed him in the comments section, I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Well, that's America right there. Because again, if you don't say anything when you see it happening, then you're just as guilty of as I mean, you're participating. You're either participating in the problem or the solution. And when you start advocating for children that clearly their own parents aren't advocating for them, then you start exposing, no, these people are using them as props, and they're using them as, some social media clout and to get the clicks and the views, and God forbid, the money payout on the back end. uh, Congratulations, because that check that you just got was because you just exploited your child. Hope you sleep good at night because you're disgusting. But yeah, I think from a school perspective, I mean, I'd be going to the school board and I'd start talking to other parents and just saying, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this way? Who decided it? And we need to rethink what's actually going on. And like I said, I don't know what some of those solutions are going to look like, but I just know that the first step in finding them is having conversations with other parents and the school board.
Absolutely. And I think too, oh my gosh, I sometimes I feel so bad for parents with all the dangers that they now have to share with their own children, that we didn't have to deal with whenever we were young necessarily. The conversations were generally a lot more simple than all the obstacles and, ways that children can be, hunted and preyed on these days. But I think too, parents need to add this into their conversations with their child. Parents know, at least good parents know, to educate their children on consent, on touching, on what's appropriate, what's not, on who to tell if somebody is touching you inappropriately, what to do in the circumstance that that happens. But I don't think that's in the conversation enough on, ways that a child can be digitally, abused through technology. A child, again, like you said, see something, say something. I think that should also be brought into the conversation with children, where if children see somebody taking a video of them, they should be given that education to call that parent out too and say, hey, like, I don't want you to record me. Can you please turn that off? Or I don't want my picture taken. Can you please not put me in this photo? I know it's another thing for parents to think about, but I think that would be really great too. The more kids that speak up in these situations too, when their parents are not around, because that happens a lot too. We leave our children a lot of times in environments where the parents aren't with the child for, all those hours, even during school, for teachers and different people to be videoing them, or at sporting events after school. And so I think too, giving children that education to be able to stand up for themselves and to have those conversations too, I think could possibly help move the needle in the right direction too when the parents aren't there to speak out for them.
Well, 100%. And I honestly think that should be part of the school programs, if anything, in elementary school, because the, and again, going back to authority figures, as children are going to look at any adult as authority figures. They just are because of the sheer age difference. And, well, you're the same age as my mom. I might not know you, but, you're an adult. So yeah, I'm going to do what you tell me to do. Right. And I think it's a parent's responsibility to, I mean, for lack of better words, role play with their children in situations like that. Okay, now what do we say when, this person pulls out their phone and asks to take, a picture of your dress because it's so pretty and they want to get one just like that for their little girl? You tell them, no, you're not allowed to take pictures of me because my mom said so. And when you empower those children, especially at such a young age, to draw those boundaries and say, no, this isn't okay. No, that's not okay. And especially to have those open conversations with their parents so that, even if the person doesn't listen to them and they come home and say, yeah, this, I told them no, mom, and this person, took a picture of me anyways, or they took a video, then they're not, again, you've already opened the door to the conversations when you sit down and educate your child. And same thing with, the kids that are online, and parents that allow their children to have social media accounts. Okay, you can have parental controls and you can have all of those things. But then I insert the caveat to anybody can present themselves any way that they want to present. You can have, a 40-year-old man show up as a 12-year-old girl. And those accounts can be curated in in as much as I hate to say it, it's from an industry perspective. There are industries out there designed that focus on children. You just like there are bot farms out there that can spin up all of, the comments in the comment section and create whatever, illusion they want created. Equal to that, those bot farms can be out there to create accounts, make them look like 12-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever year old children. And you could pull that up and think, oh, there's 100 pictures that are posted of, little, Toby that's 12 years old and he looks like a good kid. Okay, but do you know Toby's parents? Do you know who they are? Probably not, because you're exposing on the internet. We have no idea who these people are. So, especially when it comes to, kids getting DM'd or getting, they need to put, parents need to put things in perspective that from a digital perspective, you treat people the exact same as you would in person. If a stranger comes up and tries to talk to you, just like if a stranger drops in your DMs, your first order of business is, I mean, the beauty of digital is you can ignore it. But the other part is, I'm going to tell my mom, this person came up and tried talking to me today. This is where I was. This is what happened. And, or show the DM to your parents and that type of thing. So there's mechanisms that can happen, but that all starts with communication awareness and the conversations that need to happen in the home and, the communities that surround that, whether that's, even from, like I said before, that video that I shared, and I'm not saying that even what I shared caused, a bunch of other people to go and make comments. I think it was, a domino effect of kind of just from a sheer exposure perspective because people were so disgusted with what they were seeing. But when you have those conversations, you can still create that community from a digital perspective and create that digital community just like you're creating the local communities and going in and talking to the school boards or the teachers or talking to your children at home or whatever that looks like. But yeah, I think the younger that kids are empowered to say, no, stop, I'm in control of my body, whether that means, like you said, you're either not allowed to touch me, you're not allowed to digitally touch me either through pictures, videos, audio recordings, any of that type of stuff. You can't do that. And having those conversations with kids, yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't, I'm with you. I don't envy parents today. I know if I had a child, like, nobody would know. The only way that you're seeing them is if you're coming to my physical house and I know who you are. Like, I don't think there would be pictures of that kid anywhere. I'd go back to like, the like literal phones or not phones, but cameras and, taking actual pictures and doing it on film. But, that's probably again me just being too jaded or paranoid or a combination of the both. But yeah, I mean, parents are up for massive challenges today compared to, when we were growing up decades ago because it's not the same playing field. It just isn't. And I almost empathize equally for the children too, because to process that in their little brains, to understand, these abstract things and these bad people on the internet that they can't really see, I don't know how they process that either. But I think, again, from a communication perspective, in talking to kids, in having them comfortable talking to you, that's where it starts. The parents advocating for their kids, parents checking other parents, and kids being comfortable enough to say, "Hey, mom, this happened. Like, I don't know what to do," or "I told them no." That's where the change starts happening. The more it's brought front and center like that, especially with the digital exposure.
Absolutely. And sort of going off that, you've had a unique opportunity for the good and the bad to see the positives and negatives of social media. And, on behalf of everybody, thank you for sharing both sides, for having the courage, especially to talk about the hard sides of it, because as much as we want to enjoy it and there's a lot to enjoy, there is so many benefits. there are so many things on the darker side of this that we do have to educate ourselves on. And like I said, you have a unique perspective, having grown up in the era that you did, where there was no technology to all of a sudden this boom. And then also to be in a position where you're actually in that world, in cybersecurity, there we go,
Yep.
in that field to see sort of the evolution of that. And so you mentioned an example where, and I would think that this was sort of probably some of the main crimes that you would see back in those days when we first started to get introduced to technology, when computers first started coming online, when cybersecurity became a thing, were sort of here's some corrupted files on this person's hard drive or on their computer. Here's a virus that they got from this explicit website that they probably shouldn't have been on and that has potentially damaging and abusive exploitation material for minors, such as porn sites and things like that. Where now, we're talking about all these other examples of different threats and different ways that, criminals and pedophiles and people now have even more access. They have AI. They can alter photos now. They can download photos. They can download videos. They can screen record. They can screenshot. Like there's so many different ways now that people have ways to not just get our photos and videos and our information, and even from the third party world of talking about who on these different apps has access. All these apps didn't exist at one time whenever computers came out either. So we were still in a way, in that space of maybe sending emails and going on AOL chat and having, these explicit websites that some people would visit. But there wasn't as much, going on as far as what people had access to, as far as altering photos and actually getting material from online from different people. So in that, like what do you foresee? So you've had the opportunity to sort of see where it kind of started and what was to be worried about to all, how that's grown. That portfolio of issues has gone from maybe a few things that you'd see to now this massive issue. What do we have to worry about in the future?
Yeah, I mean, that all goes back to, artificial intelligence. And the scary part with that in the depths that that runs is what people have to understand is that by the time something reaches mainstream, like artificial intelligence, it's been in existence for much, much longer than we're aware of. And, prime example is, a lot of the things that the government does and information that's been released and things of that nature. Those things existed decades ago and they were doing it forever ago. So we're just seeing it mainstream because it's been quote unquote commercialized, right? Now you can make your videos faster for content creators and you can do this for, influencers in that whole arena. They've made something that started essentially as, a government tool and then now turned it into commercial use and common use for, the average Joe. And you don't have to have any level of, technical aptitude. Like you don't have to have any of the degrees that I have or be working in the industry for 20 years to hop on and use any of these AI tools. Anybody can use them. And it's a rapidly growing market. The part that scares me with it is that we're going to bridge this area where we don't know reality from artificial. And I forget what the guy's name is, but he built a business off of this, which is like so absolutely, I don't even have words for it because it's just, it's mind blowing that can even exist. He made a living and does make a living because of the artificial intelligence software that he uses to make himself look like Tom Cruise. He has gotten brand deals. Now how you can take someone's literal identity, like I am making videos and portraying and having this artificial intelligence tool turn me into Tom Cruise and this is my brand. How you can even do that without breaking so many laws is beyond me. And this is the part that scares me with it is because again, going back to, the legislation part of it and the laws and that type of thing. Technology is advanced at a rate that the human capacity was not prepared for or built for. we again, our brains are not designed to be plugged into the internet or to be in front of and have this constant feed of information coming in. We're just not designed that way. So when we have something like artificial intelligence that can now create this world where we don't know what's real and what's not, or who's a human and who's not, or that that person just stole my identity literally and is portraying as me and making videos as me and using my voice. And so they classify that as what's essentially called deep fakes. So the concept of deep fakes in the artificial intelligence arena has been ongoing for a number of years, and I think that will be massively abused in all capacities. And you see this kind of going on with some of the scams that are pretty common for these bad actors to portray. And some of the most recent ones that have come out are video recordings of people's quote unquote children, where the parent will answer the phone, the child will start screaming that they've been kidnapped and that they're being held hostage and that they need to pay a ransom. And then the bad actor will come on and give them bank information where they need to do the wire transfer. The problem is that these bad actors will take the videos of your children where the children are talking and they will make it into an auto recording, like an audio recording saying whatever they want them to say. And if you are put in a situation like that, do you honestly think that the first thought that's going to pop in your head when you answer your phone and hear your child screaming is, gee, I wonder if this is fake recording? That is not going to be the first thing that's going to pop in your head as a parent. You are going to be in a complete emotional panic and you're going to do whatever it is that you can do to get your child back. And they will wire the money, and there's your first transaction fraud. And now they have access to your banking information. They can reverse engineer that and wipe out your bank account. So you magnify that from a video perspective, where people are actually portraying anybody that they want to portray and do that side by side comparison, which again, if you look up that guy that does the deep fake of Tom Cruise, his whole brand is based on that. He makes a living off of that. And we've said that that's okay. The lines that we've blurred from a legal perspective in law enforcement and again legislature around surrounding what are ethical practices, what are not, what laws and regulations do we need to abide by, and that type of thing. They've done nothing on the artificial intelligence side. And even going back to, you deal with something is, and it's old school now in the grand scheme of things with identity theft. Identity theft has been around for a number of years. They still can't fight that. So from a reactive standpoint, in a proactive standpoint, when you're talking about technology, we are so far behind in that area that that's the part that's alarming to me. And I don't even know where you would even start if somebody were to actually steal your identity digitally and manufacture you as essentially a character in their world and monetize off of that. Not to mention, think of, and this is the part that I always tell people, and they could do it directly or they could go after their kids. If you have built a platform and or you have built a big following or you are just a highly successful person and maybe you're not even on the internet, if they can't get to you, they will come after your kids. If they can't get to your kids, they're going to look, do you have a brother? Does your brother have kids? They will go after your family in some capacity because again, you're assuming that these bad actors are operating with some semblance of ethics and they're not. They don't give a shit. It is all wide open, fair play for them. So from an artificial intelligence perspective, think about someone that you know and you love and you respect and that is, we'll say, a public figure. Now imagine that public figure has a compromising video that goes viral on the internet. How are you going to distinguish? Now, again, for the trained eye, you can probably detect visually whether or not that's artificial intelligence that manufactured that video. But it's becoming so good that you can't do that anymore without actually running forensics on the origin of that video. And again, I'm not a forensics expert, but I'm assuming that there's things that you could tell without having, the original video or the original download, that type of thing, where you could tell whether or not artificial intelligence manufactured it. But just as you know, anybody can go on the internet and say whatever they want, and at that instant, that damage is already done. Once that damage is done, you don't recover from that from a reputation perspective. So anybody can come online and manufacture whatever video that they want of something that you're saying, something that you didn't say, something that you did, something that you didn't do, and you have no laws that will protect you. You have a ghost that you're chasing to try and prosecute. And now that video lives on the internet for forever. That's my problem with especially now that, AI has entered the chat. Um, we don't have any grounds or lines to where we cross and we say, okay, we've got this in place for that. We've got that in place for this. And even from we'll say a global perspective or even nationwide from a US standpoint, and kind of flipping into the business arena and just from like we'll say the general American population, there's also no ethics or moral ground for how businesses operate with artificial intelligence. So one of the conferences that I went to last year, um, there and again when I go on these conferences, I'm, like one of maybe two or three females that are a room of, 100, 200, 300 guys. And I had a really hard time of not just getting up in the middle of some of these speeches that were being done, and just like unloading. And that would obviously be career suicide. So I opted. There are times when I opt to keep my mouth shut. But the point of what they were talking about is, replacing human jobs with artificial intelligence. And when you start talking about that concept and you saw that introduced, although I don't think people actually acknowledged that that's what was happening, that got introduced the day that self-checkout was brought to the table. The second self-checkout was brought to the table, now you have, although artificial intelligence isn't doing it, but you have replaced a job with a machine. The machine is doing it. You have no human personnel that's standing there that's scanning your groceries and checking you out. There's an ethics and a moral ground that I think that businesses have to operate with. And in my opinion, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it, I'm not business savvy in that arena. But I think if a company establishes themselves as a technology-based company, meaning that they're primarily going to function utilizing artificial intelligence, or a percentage higher, like if they hit that 51% mark where they're using artificial intelligence to generate revenue, they should be taxed differently and they should be taxed higher than any other company that's out there. Then you have companies that started as, human workforce, again, the Walmarts and Targets of the world that, have cashiers that are scanning the groceries and around the stores, that type of thing. When you're replacing them with technology and you don't establish yourself as that quote unquote technology company, then you're fined and then you're reclassified from a tax perspective once you start operating where that human to machine ratio changes. And something needs to be done with that because people think that they are omitted and, well, no machine could do my job. Have you seen them building houses already? They're already building houses with machines. The amount of things that are being done, and again, the part that people don't understand with artificial intelligence is that it is an intelligent source. It learns from other things. It picks up behaviors, it picks up tendencies, and I've seen all that with the analytics and the behavior tools that I've used in my jobs. They are behavior tools, just like that's artificial intelligence. And when you wrap the behavior intelligence around that, it will start mimicking human behaviors, human tendencies. You will start seeing, and things like that are popping up now with these robots where they have quote unquote human personalities. So I think again, from a pure humanity standpoint, I think people need to like generally start screaming about why there aren't laws regulating where technology can and can't be used, in what capacity it can be used, and where you're morally just so out of line that it's considered a crime if you operate in quote unquote this capacity, whatever that capacity deems to be, however that's defined, right? So that's the part that scares me from, where technology is going, how it's being used, the impact to humanity, because like I said, in general, the human population is not progressing at the same rate that technology is. And until we put regulations and, for lack of better words, try and pump the brakes on where technology can and can't exist, and to what degree we're okay operating with it side by side. And listen, there's a million things that technology does from a benefits perspective. When you look at specific surgeries that can be performed that we couldn't do 20 years ago, or from a learning perspective, you can learn globally and literally be anywhere that you would ever want to be from the confines of your home in front of a screen. And there's beauty in that in some capacity. But on the flip side, when you start looking at what the potential impact would be to humanity and us as people and the connections, we were designed as people to connect with other people. We weren't designed to function in a world of machines. So I think, and whether or not that's my idealistic outlook of the world, but the people that I've talked to, a lot of them agree that I don't want to be sitting in a restaurant where I'm being served by a machine, and I have a robot that I'm eating dinner with. Like that's we're not built that way, and we can't operate in that type of world. So I think and again, I think it's going to have to be driven by the people, as where we're okay with it and where we're not. And I think the part that's going to be detrimental to us is we're going to have to cut ties with convenience in some capacity and opt for the inconvenient in order to start removing those elements of technology in the places that we go. And there's stupid things that I do that, I force, like when I go order my groceries, I don't go into the store and buy the groceries at the stores where they don't have humans that are cashiers. I will order my order at the grocery store to go pick up, because guess what? A human has to walk it out to my car. So I still get the convenience of, easy shopping, that type of thing, but I'm doing it in a way that force the human to actually have a job. And, maybe some people could look at that and be like, well, I wouldn't even shop there. Okay, I get it. And I think some of those decisions we're going to have to make, but until we get to a point where we regulate, especially artificial intelligence, I think wars could be built off that, and very, very bad things could be spawned off of that particular technology if it's not regulated. So that's kind of where I see things going. I think that's where we need to step in, and make demands about, how we're going to live, especially for future generations and our kids.
Another example going along the same lines of what you were saying that I saw pop up on, I think it was Twitter the other day. There was a random account I don't follow, but sometimes the algorithm's a little bit strange. It'll just put a random post in, and I saw this post go by in my feed that said, "Learn how I make $15,000 a month through AI on OnlyFans." And I clicked on it because I was like, wait, what is this person talking about? And I was scrolling through, and they were talking about how they developed how AI, just like you said, it's so flawless now. You can create a digital person that doesn't even exist. and you can have a character online, and you can do it also, like you said, with somebody that does exist. But you think about sort of that can of worms too, where like now you put one picture of your child online. What's gonna, like, if you can't get justice now on somebody taking a physical photo and altering it that you actually took, that's yours. Imagine when they take that photo and now they just make a digital version of your child. It's not even the same photo. It has flaws and things that weren't in your photo, but it's clearly still your child. And now they're creating videos from it. They're creating, exploitation material. They're putting it online. You know, Imagine how hard it is to get accounts taken down now that have real people. Like you said, now accounts that are exploiting children are getting followers. They're getting followed by 17 million people online, and people are clapping about it and cheering it on and rallying around it and supporting it instead of being outraged by it. And so you think about like, where's that line? Like, imagine how impossible it could be if some anonymous account creates an OnlyFans or even an Instagram account of your child and starts putting completely digitized videos of your child on there. Like it's going to be near impossible to get that taken down. And then what's the stipulation? If it's like a cartoon or an anime type, but it's clearly based off a real person and it's being sold or monetized, that's essentially trafficking. But like, where's the line with that? If we can't get justice now with actual exploitation material of physical children, people taking their actual photos and videos and putting them online or selling them or altering them. Imagine the landscape if we continue just plastering our kids online and people start thinking, well, I don't even want to try, to take the actual photo. I'm gonna create an AI version of this. That's not the photo. It's a version of the child, but it's not the actual child. And that's what I'm gonna sell online. Like there's no going back after that, and we literally don't have the capacity, like you were saying earlier, to even, comprehend taking care of an issue that big. Like we can't even take care of the issues that are happening now. So it really is scary to think about how AI is going to impact this landscape and how it already is. Like I said, there's already accounts that are boasting about, I make 15 grand a year off of this fake person that I'm selling on a porn site. She's not even real. I just create content with her through AI and like I'm making a lot of money off of it. Like, oh my gosh, like what a gold mine for a predator, to have access to all the children, all the photos of anybody in the world. And then to have these AI tools, like you said, you don't have to go to school to learn them. You don't have to be that smart to learn it. There's tons of tutorials online. Anyways, even if something is difficult, you can pretty much learn any software program online now. Like it doesn't take an idiot to figure it out if they don't know how to use it. So I completely agree with you. Like it's really scary, the landscape that we're walking into and like how ill prepared from an awareness perspective we are as a society, but also on the law side, where are those laws? Where's the line blur? Where is it cut? Where's it black and white? And like, where do we have to go from there? And like, if we can't fix what's happening now, how are we gonna, as the snowball's rolling and growing, like, how are we gonna keep up with it?
Well, and the part that I think that people can't comprehend either, and in putting things in perspective, and talking about Pornhub for a second, which just also makes me want to vomit. But there was an article that was recently released where they interviewed, I think a couple whistleblowers on that previously worked for Pornhub, and they were assigned to quote unquote moderate 700 videos per shift. That's 87 videos per hour that they would have to look through and moderate for any underage children. Okay. The other thing that they talked about is that they would, because they had to get through such a volume, they wouldn't listen to the audio. And they verified that in some circumstances, had they listened to the audio when they were going through and supposedly supposed to be moderating these videos about what the content was being, put up, age of the people, that type of thing, they would have heard children and women screaming in the background, no, stop, I don't want to do this. So when you talk about things from that arena and things that we already know are going on and that people are actively talking about, then what happens when, to your point, when someone takes multiple videos of multiple children and takes the body of one, the face of the other, imagine going in and trying to prosecute or take some legal action and somebody saying to you, but that's not the full body of your child, but they didn't use your child's face, but they didn't like imagine the pure rage that's going to come over that parent when they're sitting across from some lawyer's office and being told that they can't do anything because that's not their quote unquote full body, or they only used her voice and it's someone else's. Like, and there was actually one content creator that sort of made a mockery out of influencers, and he did it as a joke, but he ended up making a shit ton of money. Is he did exactly what you said. He built a digital person that legit didn't exist, stood up an entire platform and had tens of thousands of followers on this account with this person that wasn't even real. He monetized the account, and then he ended up blowing it all out of the water, basically like laughing at influencers because he couldn't stand them and said, "Y'all are going to be out of a job in 6 months because we can replace you. Like you are replaceable." So yeah, when you start talking about like the digital consumption and the capabilities, like what at what point are we not quote unquote completely violated, right? At what point is a child not completely violated when digitally their image or videos of them have been manipulated enough to skirt that line and then, oh, sorry, well, I wasn't, I mean, that's basically like telling a rape victim, well, you didn't do a rape kit. So we have this other evidence, or, people are agreeing to these other things, but we really don't have enough. So you're out of luck. There's still an active violation there. There still should be repercussions. So from a proactive and a reactive standpoint, you have to have those things marrying in the middle to protect people so that one, they're aware of the capabilities, and two, if they are violated, that they actually have legal ramifications that they can imply on the people that are doing it. But again, when you're talking about, I filed a police report against the internet. Like what are you doing here? So that's why I'm saying there's a massive leap that needs to happen from a technology standpoint to both restrict it and be able to react to it when these types of crimes actually happen.
Have you heard of anybody advocating or fighting to get some type of law or regulations or restrictions in place? Have you heard of anybody campaigning for that? I personally
So,
haven't really, but I'm not really on this side of the child abuse equation too much, which is why I was excited to have you on today.
yep. So there's actually, ironically, I'm having a conversation next week with a woman, who I believe her and her husband actually started. I know they created a foundation, to help fight against trafficking. And that's actually part of the conversation that I'm going to have with her because I think honestly, and this is the part that blows my mind, but I think there are states where those laws exist and there are states where those laws don't. So that's actually going to be part of my conversation with her, is to really understand, one, can I do anything to help you with my background and my expertise? Two, what mission are you guys on right now? And what's the playing field here for what we're getting into? And then three, what needs to happen in order to be able to do some of those things that you just said, right? And again, there's some laws that are out there and some things that exist, but going back to, that Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, what does that actually cover? Do people even know that that exists? In what areas, does that actually protect children? But then, oh, by the way, if you apply that to the social media concept where you put that little asterisk in there and, oh, but can do it with parental approval, then we have to have equal rights to be able to go after the parents that are exploiting their kids, right? So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. I'm looking forward to that conversation with her next week. So I might have a follow-up for you. But yeah, the answer to that is I honestly don't know. how much is being done. If in my opinion, I think it should be handled at the federal level, as well as the state and local, because you can't have something that's happening in, I guess, the proverbial, home of people, and on these devices and that type of thing, or in their local communities, and not have people educated. And I think that's going to trickle down to law enforcement needs to be educated. First responders need to be educated. Any capacity where we've been doing the traditional training for, like I said, where women are violated or things happen, where, either a child is molested or raped or any of those things. You have to have the digital conversations to understand, what does that digital crime look like? What questions do I need to be asking them? And how do I handle these situations? Because I guarantee, if they get anything, they get the classic, it's workplace violence education day today, and we're going to give you this 20-minute video that nobody's going to be paying attention to, or someone's going to fall asleep 5 minutes into it. So I think there, again, from awareness to education to laws and everything in between, I think all of those things need massive work because of the rate that technology is actually growing, especially with artificial intelligence.
Now, we gave a lot of advice for parents. Is there anything else that if there are parents listening, who have children and might be a little bit worried after listening to this conversation, are there any words of maybe wisdom or hope or anything else that you'd like to share with them that could help empower them through this?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty is that, even, in the one thing that I will say to parents is, the first thing that they're probably thinking is, oh, they're rolling through like the camera roll in their head of all the images that they posted on social media and that type of thing. The beauty is, again, once they're out there, they're out there, but you still have control whether or not they stay there, right? You can go to your accounts, you can delete those images and delete those photos. Are they stored on a server somewhere? Are they backed up somewhere? Absolutely. But again, if they're not on your account anymore, then you're reducing the exposure, right? The other thing too is, obviously, have the private account. You can mark your account as private, and I would say, if you don't intimately know every single person that is quote unquote following you, meaning you would be uncomfortable with that person showing up at your house wanting to have a conversation with your child, then they shouldn't be on your account. And again, the beauty is you control that. You can remove them and you can pull them off. And on the flip side of that, if you still want to share your child and you still want to share those experiences and you still want to do those things, you can do that without having to show your child's face. You don't even have to show your child. There's ways that you can work around that and not expose your child to social media and posting pictures and videos and that type of stuff. But the biggest part is that I would say, if this is your first time hearing any of this information, start having the conversations. Start having the conversations with other parents. Share this episode with them. Look at what the dangers are, in the conversations are so important. That's always where it starts. And as much as I hate being essentially like, the fear monger and coming in with, all the depressing information and, oh my God, you're sharing this again, like, people can only take so much of it, right? But when people understand and can make something more common knowledge, that's how a lot of this stuff stops. And again, that's where we start keeping other people accountable and holding them accountable, or saying, hey, I get that, you're posting those videos, but did you know, these things can happen? Did you know, people can take that picture of your child and turn it into a video? And the other part too is, you have to be okay with, there's going to be people that just don't care, and you're not going to be able to change them. But the ones that do, by having that conversation and opening that door, that's where the difference happens, right? That's where we start making changes. All it takes is one person to say one thing and open that conversation. And now you're having a completely different view of how you protect your child. On the flip side of it, there's a massive opportunity for, basically like the mama bear attitude to come out globally, right? Think of every mom that would come together in a community and advocate for this is what we're fighting against. And that's the stuff that I like. I get goosebumps when I think about those things because I know that that power is there. I know that capacity is there. I've seen it happen with other things where people have come together and said, we're not tolerating this anymore. We're not doing this anymore. And all it takes is that one person to say, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm standing up. These are the laws that we're going to push for. We're going to Congress. We're going to the president. We're going to whoever is going to listen. And we're putting this in front of them because our children matter first. And when you start taking those types of roles, you can understand that now that conversation just turned into something that literally goes across the nation or the world to protect kids. Now, again, what are you doing? You're protecting those future generations and the ones that come after that from those people. So I think there's a massive community that can be built around something that is dark and scary and turn it into something that essentially becomes a movement for the better.
I completely agree. And I love that you mentioned how you can sort of take social media and the bad things on it and you can use it for good. You can use your accounts to bring awareness to this. You can make posts about it. You can create a podcast on this. I haven't seen a single podcast out there that has, that sort of talks about these specific issues and like helps educate parents, create a blog. Like how Jane was saying, she posted a video of somebody that put their children up on stage and, was sort of exploiting them, having them lift their shirt up to a complete audience of strangers. I think too, like we can use online to call this stuff out. We can be the ones that have the courage to educate. And like you said, not everybody is going to get it. Not everybody's going to agree. There's going to be some lashback. There's going to be some predators on there that are upset that we're exposing them, but they knew that they were in danger in the physical world. They know that a lot of parents now are aware of predators at playgrounds and predators at these different places. We've gotten a lot smarter in that way for families that aren't already complicit in this. I know some families are um, perpetuating these types of abuses, and there's fathers and parents and grandparents that are these predators, but for families actually trying to do good, that's why the predators moved online, because it's so much easier. They don't have to show their face. It's easier to hide. There's not as many voices on there. People are looking in the physical world to make sure their kids are safe, but then they're handing them an iPad and walking away, or posting pictures online. So I think too, we can use social media and, trace the footsteps of these predators and start exposing them with our voices and with our accounts and with the knowledge that we can learn from people like Jane who are educating us on it. We have podcast episodes like this one that you can share. I think social media is a great place to also expose darkness, and we have to be educated on where it's lurking in order to know where it's hiding, in order to know where to shine the light on it, but we can use our social media too for good. And that can also maybe help replace some of the content of, if you're a parent having children, maybe you're advocating for children now. Maybe replace some of your posts with that you'd normally put of your child with posts advocating against predators online. There's a lot of different ways that we can sort of take action against this, both in our communities, like Jane was saying, going to your law enforcement and talking to them, getting together with community members, showing up at school board meetings or PTO meetings or these different sporting events, and really helping educate your children and your community members and your friends and other parents on all of this. But the predators are always going to look for places to hide, and they are, they're just like ants or like rats. Whenever they're found, they go running for the hills. So they're just sitting there, complacent and able to do this because we're so unaware of it. But that can change if we all come together and put our minds together and start limiting the material that they have, start advocating against it, start calling it out whenever we see it, stop making accounts popular and following them when we see this type of abuse, just like 17 million followers on a parent who's exploiting their child. Like, that's insane. All those people who are following that should go unfollow and like set a precedent. Like, that's not okay, So there's a lot of ways that we can take the bad and turn it to good. And like I said, the only reason why predators move online is because they feel like they can get away with it more. And if we take that away from them and rip that rug from underneath their feet, they're going to have to go scurry and figure it out again, and they will ultimately, but we have to be 10 steps ahead of them and not the opposite, which is, traditionally and historically how it's been. So this has all been just such amazing information, Jane, and really eye-opening. And I would love to have you back on sometime. I think there's so many different rabbit holes that we can cover this. But was there anything else today that you wanted to cover that we didn't get to yet?
No, this has been amazing. And I think we covered, all the points at least that I had highlighted. So yeah, I would love to come back, continue the conversation, and trust me when I say pick a rabbit hole, honey, and we will go down it because I've probably been through all of it, or I will go down it and find all the information. But yes, definitely appreciate you having me and allowing me to share that information and educating, some of the parents and creating awareness for this particular topic. So thank you so much for this. I appreciate you and everything that you are doing and allowing people like me a platform to share our voice and education and background to help others.
This has been a long time coming. I've been really wanting to connect with you on this. And like I said, this is something I'm also not privy to, so I think this is a really important conversation. It's only going to become more important. Predators aren't on the streets anymore as much. They're hiding in places where, they don't even have to give their name or their face or their identity. And, they can hide behind a screen now and abuse children and exploit children right from their couch. So it's a scary landscape. But like I said, if we can shine the light on all of this, then they don't have anywhere to hide. They're going to get up and go scurry, and I do believe that that's possible. And that's the beauty of social media. Scary as it can be, there's also way more good people on social media than bad, just like in the real world. It's just people hide in mysterious and unsuspecting ways. And online is a lot easier than in the physical realm. And so more predators are going to attempt to do that. But, there's more good people than bad. And we can take the reins in our hands and start pushing for legislation, start pushing for safety in our communities and schools and elsewhere where children get together or go without parents or even with parents, sporting events and things like that. Like we can really have a voice at some of this and help mitigate the amount of material that could potentially be online and be abused by predators. So we really need more people like you, Jane. And I hope there's somebody on the other end that works in your field and feels the same way and gets courage from this to come talk about it. I hope there's a parent on the other end that gets inspired to go in their communities or to go talk to their child about this today or to redirect their social media presence and maybe look at what they've posted and how they can maybe change the content that they post online, or even take their photos down, blur the kids' faces out and put it back up. There's a lot of ways that we can get around this and, keep our children safe in the process while also being able to maintain those connections that we all really rely on through social media these days. And as we should, it's beautiful that we can now connect with people that aren't just in our communities, but we also have to know the repercussions of that, how to combat it, and, how to ultimately keep anybody vulnerable in our lives safe on those platforms and, from predators lurking on them. So this was a really amazing conversation. I learned so much and I'm really excited to have you on again. I ask anybody listening, we could only cover so much today. I could literally talk to Jane for hours and hours and hours and hours. Some of you on the other end might have questions. So I would love if you guys, my email is in the show notes. If you guys want to email me a question or an email to Jane, if you don't feel comfortable posting online, feel free to do that and we can ask that question on the next episode and or I can forward your email to Jane. That way you guys can have some communication. And then also if you guys have some questions that you want to ask publicly that we can maybe talk about on the next episode or just to start a conversation, leave that in the comments. We want to know what your questions are and how we can dive a little bit deeper into this and, help you guys out as parents, as advocates, as survivors, and or as people who want to have children in the future. We want you to feel empowered, not afraid of the world that we're in. And we should make the predators afraid because of all the knowledge that we're gaining. So, and I think that it'll eventually turn that way. So if you guys have questions, leave it in the comments. Feel free to send me an email, write any encouragement to Jane that you guys can. Share this episode with a friend if you found value in it. And or if you have friends that could benefit from learning this, start these conversations in your communities. I'll have all my links down below too. Follow me wherever you guys can. I never know what platforms are going to terminate me, which ones are going to restrict me, censor. So the more that we can keep in touch, the more that we can share this information across vital communities and help this disclosure movement keep growing. So you guys, we couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.